to aggressively pursue a top pick, potentially 2 or 3.
The Pelicans would make Zion Williamson available ahead of trying to get into that top end of the draft.
But the Pelicans are among teams seriously pursuing that number 2 overall pick.
The Zion Williamson situation just took a really crazy turn. And no, it doesn't even have to necessarily pertain to what we talked about in our last video. This has more to do with his future NBA career. But before we get to the content, man, we're gonna run another $1,000 giveaway. We're gonna give 5 subscribers that turn on our notifications on this channel a combined amount of $1,000. We're gonna announce the winners during the beginning of free agency on my community tab. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro.
And one team that has emerged that really would like to move up from their spot at 14 of the New Orleans Pelicans, actually hunting a star player caliber, maybe like a guy like Scoot Henderson. Pelicans have had some cursory discussions from what I've been told, if the Pelicans are going to make for the first time truly Zion Williamson available ahead of next week's draft. Consider a player of this caliber. He's obviously had injury history, a little bit of drama recently.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I had a lot of high hopes for the 2019 NBA draft. I mean, Zion Williamson was supposed to be, tell me if you've heard this one before, the best prospect since LeBron James. Ja Morant was supposed to be one hell of a consolation prize. He was advertised as a lengthier version of John Wall, and to be honest, they kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. But so far, the top 2 picks of the NBA draft have had their share of controversy. At first with Zion Williamson, it was the fact that he was having trouble staying healthy, whether that pertained to him sustaining a myriad of injuries or the fact that it looked like he was gaining weight throughout those injuries. So far, out of all the content I've made about Zion Williamson, top trending topic in regards to Zion Williamson has always pertained to his weight. Frustrating thing about this is the fact that whenever Zion Williamson is playing basketball, he is one hell of a talent. In his healthiest season, which was his 2nd season in the NBA, Zion averaged 27 points per game, 3.7 assists per game, 7.2 rebounds per game off of 61% shooting. And then when he did have a limited amount of time to play in 2022 to 2023, he once again averaged 26 points per game. What's even more frustrating about this situation is I have to give it up to David Griffin. He did a great job building a team around Zion Williamson. And as time progressed, he brought in more and more pieces to make sure everything fit around him. During the same offseason that the Pelicans drafted Zion Williamson, they traded Anthony Davis for one hell of a haul, trading Anthony Davis for Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and 3 first-round picks, including the number 4 overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft, which the Pelicans would eventually end up trading as well. When it came time for the Pelicans to trade Jrue Holiday, they traded him for Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, and 3 first-round picks and 2 additional pick swaps, even completely remaking Lonzo Ball's jump shot and then moving on from him right before the Chicago Bulls took him on. And of course, Lonzo Ball's situation is its own tragedy, and if you want us to cover that, we can. It's just getting worse and worse, and honestly it makes me really sad to talk about it, to be honest. But through it all, there's been one constant. Whenever Zion Williamson takes the floor, the New Orleans Pelicans are one of the best teams in the NBA. They were a top 3 team in the West earlier on in this season. A lot of people forget, but that's the problem. He just can't stay healthy. Last year, the New Orleans Pelicans also struck magic following the 2022 NBA playoffs, where the New Orleans Pelicans put up a valiant effort in the first round of the playoffs, where they established themselves as a scrappy and gritty team that wasn't just going to be a doormat versus the defending Western Conference champion Phoenix Suns. They took the Phoenix Suns to 6 games, and it was one of the most exciting series we saw. You saw role players like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones really step up and create a name for themselves. All of this was further evidence that once Zion Williamson returned, New Orleans Pelicans would be a team to be reckoned with, and we saw that earlier this year. So there's no question in anyone's mind. It's clear the future of the New Orleans Pelicans is very, very bright, assuming Zion Williamson could stay healthy. That's the problem. He has not been able to stay healthy. We have not heard much about Zion Williamson until about a week ago, where he got into one of the most interesting situations I've ever seen. A star player that could potentially be the face of the NBA NBA get into. And I'm sorry, I know I'm like cracking up as I'm saying this. It's just so funny to me how both Zion Williamson and Ja Morant are so freaking marketable, and then they do some BS to screw it up. We made a whole video on this. I'll give you a brief recap. Zion Williamson announced with his fairly anonymous girlfriend, woman that he was involved with, I don't know, that they were having a child together. And it was a very wholesome moment until, well, Zion said this in the gender reveal video.
I don't know what the future holds, but mommy and daddy love you. You don't know nothing else in this world. Know that mommy and daddy love you.
And to be honest, flew over my head, didn't really care until Mariah Mills went on this huge Twitter rampage that was so intense that it quite literally got her account banned. And this is the second time it got banned in the past week. The first time was when she sent out the first stream of tweets. Type in her name and porn comes up. Fucking hell. If I see one more BBL, I'm gonna like legit throw up. Saying things like, better pray I'm not pregnant too because I'm definitely late, at Zion Williamson. I was with you last week in New Orleans and you couldn't tell me you had a random thought pregnant after all I've done for you, at Zion Williamson. I let you be so many times without a condom and this is what you do to me, a hood rat that does CPN. You're putting my life in danger, f***ing all these hoes raw. I warned you about trapping type hoes, at Zion Williamson, and you didn't listen to me. I know the game, f*** you and congrats again. The bill was too high, so you had to scrap for crumbs when you couldn't see me or I was too busy. I think this is really funny because clearly Mariah Mills is just butthurt that she lost the Ho Olympics. Getting knocked up by Zion Williamson is quite literally just guaranteeing yourself a lifetime supply of child support, which is unfortunate. I hate this culture. I hate that this is the way it works, but clearly this is all these hoes are thinking about because Zion Williamson's baby mama, Concrete Rose, is tweeting like she won the Super Bowl. Happy hoes ain't hating and hating hoes ain't happy. And then Mills responded by saying, you not on my level, ma, believe that. This is where it gets ridiculous. And you would think Zion Williamson would learn his lesson because clearly what Mariah Mills is going for here is the consolation prize. She didn't get first place, which is having Zion's child. So at the very minimum, she could at least siphon as much clout from this clout lemon as she possibly could. Just squeeze the lemon and try to get as much juice as she possibly can. And to be honest, her tweets were popping off, to her credit. A+ marketing to funnel traffic to a particular website that you may have heard of. What's even more comical is there's a woman that was jealous of Mariah Mills' consolation prize because yeah, she didn't have a baby with Zion, and yeah, she didn't siphon clout from Zion, so she decided to post a picture of the back of Zion's head saying, and be laying around sleeping comfortably knowing you had is pregnant, disgusted. Now, it gets really funny because she goes ahead and posts this huge, like 20-page essay complaining about the fact that Zion didn't buy her stuff. She opens this up by saying, and I'm gonna do my best to translate, this has nothing to do with clout. I get my own money in real life and never been a prosty or sold my body. I'm sure that kind of explains itself. You're outside buying hoes Culinans who didn't have $100,000 to their name when you met them. So far, she's crushing Zion Williamson. This roast is going fairly well. Then she says, why didn't I get my Bentayga and my Richard Mille last summer, at Zion? Oh God, here we go. She's quite literally complaining about the fact that Zion isn't giving her money because I don't let you record me. I never gave you a threesome, or I've never had an OnlyFans or was on Pornhub, so I guess I was all play. I probably never had a chance, you a nasty at it. You would think Zion would learn from all of this. You know, maybe just cut off all communication with Mariah Mills and the other woman. I mean, that's what I would do in this particular instance. Your past is your past, and as time goes on, man, you're a young man. These types of stories are gonna fade off into the sunset as your career progresses. I don't know any of Blake Griffin's baby mamas, and he's not even that big of a superstar anymore. But Zion Williamson continued to do the worst thing he possibly could, messaging Mariah Mills, who already verified it was Zion, by the way, by showing the Zion Williamson account that she was DMing on Snapchat not only had a Bitmoji that resembled Zion, but was also verified on Snapchat, and Snapchat's verification system is very unique. So I don't know why, but Zion thought it would be a good idea to DM this woman. Mariah starts by saying, I hate this. I'm really upset. Oh man. Oh boy. Zion, my friend, you are getting manipulated here, bud. I'm only 2 text messages in. Not looking too good for you. Zion responds, so why are you posting all of this on social media? Delete that stuff. Huh. Gee, I wonder. Maybe it has something to do with the millions of views that the tweets are getting. Bro, this girl sent like 20 plus tweets. And you think this stuff is discreet? Zion then makes a request that I think we all saw coming. Delete that stuff. Mariah acts heartbroken because you kissed her. That's your girlfriend. You lied to me. Zion said, delete everything and we'll talk. But come on, for real? Question mark? Mariah then responds by saying, you ruined my life. You lie to me all the time. You have a baby. Go be a father. You're not my king no more. Oh my God. I can't believe that Zion's actually entertaining this. Zion responds by saying, so why are you doing all of this? Enjoy your new life with the fake. Cheap fake. She's so fake, she ran to social media to boast that she's your baby father. Clout chasing woman. You guys see the irony in all this, right? I mean, no one would know about this if it wasn't for her making a big commotion out of it. I can understand why she's making a big commotion out of it. Is it my path of doing things? No, not necessarily. But the fact that Zion's entertaining this, man, Zion, bro, you have a thing or two you could learn about women, dude. Zion responds by saying, delete that stuff. Delete the stuff and I got you. Mariah continues her masterclass in manipulation and gaslighting by saying, why should I trust you? All you do is lie. I literally was good to you. You let a whore trap you. You're going to be a dad. So happy for you. Sorry, that's for me to worry about. I'm sorry it happened, but why would you add to that fire? For real, if you do that, I got you. Not gonna do that? We're better than this, for real. I thought I was yours. I trusted you. Bro, when you see how this ends, the manipulation is wild, okay? Mariah Mills posting this tweet. Thank you for the gifts you gave me last week, Zion. Not sure why you wanted to make me upset again. It's all good. You have responsibilities now. You'd be mad too if your $107,000 allowance may be cut off because of a trap baby. And no, I'm not posting all the receipts off of this. And then she posts the receipts of Zion Williamson transferring so much money over to her. And Zion, you're asking her, why are you doing this? Oh my God. I have a couple years on Zion Williamson, but I really think that these athletes need some sort of like hoe education course. This is insane. This whole situation is absurd. This video was supposed to be about Zion Williamson's future on the New Orleans Pelicans. How am I going to transition back to NBA discussion once I unveiled all of this information? Well, I got you. Because now the New Orleans Pelicans are considering making a huge trade. I highly doubt that the Pelicans saw all this and said, you know what, we're going to trade Zion Williamson. There was enough information on the Zion Williamson situation to bring you another video, so we wanted to include everything in one large super video for you guys to enjoy. Check this out. According to Shams Charania, the New Orleans Pelicans are considering making a trade. Hey, you don't believe me? Hear it from the man himself.
To aggressively pursue a top pick, potentially 2 or 3. Henderson and Alabama's Brandon Miller are vying to potentially go number 2 to the Charlotte Hornets in the draft. But the Pelicans are among teams seriously pursuing that number 2 overall pick.
So the Pelicans want to trade with either the Hornets or the Portland Trail Blazers for the number 2 or number 3 pick. And originally, a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is Brandon Ingram. This is definitely Brandon Ingram. Why would the Pelicans give up on Zion Williamson? Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson have arrived to the New Orleans Pelicans at the same exact time. Throughout the span of their careers with the New Orleans Pelicans, Brandon Ingram has developed into one hell of a player and has played 223 games for the New Orleans Pelicans. He hasn't even entered his prime yet. He's currently just 25 years old, and he's going into his age 26 season. Zion Williamson, on the other hand, has played 114 games for the New Orleans Pelicans. So in this particular instance, if there is the opportunity to trade for Scoot Henderson, who are you going to trade in this instance? Would you trade Zion Williamson, who for some reason has a tremendous amount of hype, who's a pretty good basketball player who just can't stay healthy, who currently has this gigantic cloud of drama surrounding him, or Brandon Ingram, who quite literally doesn't have a single bit of baggage attached to him? He's one of the most quiet stars in the NBA, and his game is getting better and better and better. Not only that, he actually makes it to the court and plays for your organization, and teams perceive Zion Williamson to have significantly more value than Brandon Ingram. So here's what trades would look like in this particular instance. The New Orleans Pelicans could potentially trade away Zion Williamson and Larry Nance Jr., get the number 3 pick in the 2023 NBA draft, Anthony Simons, Yusuf Nurkic, and a future first-round pick. But here's the thing, would the Blazers really do that? Is that the move to get Damian Lillard the team he needs to compete? This could also be a Brandon Ingram trade, don't get me wrong. They could trade Brandon Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. and get the number 3 pick in the 23 draft, Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic. Zion Williamson is still perceived to be a player with a tremendous amount of potential moving forward. And the reason for for that is he's still very young. He's shown a tremendous amount of potential, and a lot of teams believe that if they get him on the right program in the right area and they get him motivated, then he could potentially tap into that potential. So Zion's trade value is significantly better. What about if the Hornets wanted to trade? The Hornets were thinking of taking Brandon Miller with the number 2 overall pick. What about LaMelo Ball and Zion Williamson in Charlotte? Zion Williamson is from North Carolina. He would return home. That would definitely get him motivated. In this instance, the New Orleans Pelicans would just give the Hornets Zion Williamson, and the Pelicans would receive the number 2 pick in the NBA draft, Gordon Hayward, Nick Richards, and a future first-round pick. Yeah, that last part is relatively speculative, but to be honest, I'm for this decision because all the other pieces of the Pelicans are rock solid. Scoot Henderson could easily develop with Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. The Pelicans have a nice and exciting young core, and for the most part, they've had to compete without Zion Williamson. So just trading Zion for a player that will be able to show up and make it to the court consistently could eventually push this team within the top 4 of the West. And if it's not this year, next year, you could see them as a top 3 team, or the year after, because they're still a young team that's growing together. Here's what's crazy about this. There's actually another source that verifies that this is very much a possibility. Now, this is coming to us via NBA insider Mark Stein, who says that the Pelicans appear to be open to trading often injured star forward Zion Williamson in hopes of moving into the top 3 of this year's draft to select promising combo guard Scoot Henderson. I heard this week from one well-placed observer who is convinced that the Pelicans would indeed consider dealing Williamson away if it meant that they could draft Scoot Henderson, pointing to a rising level of exasperation within the organization regarding Williamson's ongoing availability issues and overall approach. To be honest, this makes a lot of sense because not only has Zion Williamson been injured consistently, but there has been a history of Zion Williamson's family not necessarily being on board with Zion being a member of the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but during the 2019 NBA draft lottery, Zion Williamson looked disappointed that the New York Knicks didn't get the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Just a few years ago, there was a report about Zion Williamson's family not being on board with the New Orleans Pelicans as a franchise and wanting Zion Williamson to get traded from there. You combine that with the fact that he is completely out of shape, which isn't helping his injury situation, and I wouldn't blame the New Orleans Pelicans for moving on from him. Now, Mark Stein also noted that the team is less inclined to consider trading Brandon Ingram in the same scenario to land Scoot Henderson, which I think is the right way to go about this. Mark Stein's report echoes a growing sentiment surrounding Williamson, as ESPN's Brian Windhorst reported on Wednesday's episode of Get Up that the Pelicans have had cursory discussions about trading him to land a premium pick in this year's draft. New Orleans currently owns the number 14 pick after finishing with a 42-40 record this past season. You know, we talk about it a lot on this channel, how general managers are expected to do specific things. Like, for example, the Spurs general manager has no choice but to select Victor Wembanyama with the number 1 overall pick. Portland Trailblazers had no choice but to select Greg Oden with the number 1 pick in the 2007 NBA draft. The New Orleans Pelicans had no choice but to select Zion Williamson with the number 1 overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft. The risk is just too great. If one of these players end up being the next generational prospect and you don't select him, then you're gonna get canned. You're forever gonna be thought of that one general manager that passed on a clear-cut transcendent talent just because you had an issue with him. But in this particular case, Zion Williamson is early enough in his career where you could trade him to a different team and they could deal with his problems, and some team would be willing to overpay for Zion despite his injury issues early on in his career. If a team is able to land Zion Williamson and put him in a situation where he's motivated and ready to compete, then there's no doubt in my mind he could be a Hall of Famer someday. My top contender currently is going to be the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to try to show you highlight footage of this while we're talking about this. Imagine LaMelo Ball throwing alley-oops to Zion Williamson. This would solve the Pelicans' problem about Zion Williamson always being injured, and this would also solve the Charlotte Hornets' problem about who they should select with the number 2 pick. Because Brandon Miller is cool and all, don't get me wrong, and he could be a great player in the NBA, but you have to admit it's not nearly as exciting as getting Zion Williamson, and it's not nearly as comfortable as drafting Scoot Henderson would have been if they didn't already have an answer at the point guard position. There's a lot in this video, man, and I hope that I laid it out for you as well as I can. I know there was a ton of information, but let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.